Hi folks, Kim Schofield here with you today on another video on my YouTube channel. Today I am designing a project for Joggles using some of their stamps and stencils and products. You can see the stamps here, wonderfully fun hand-drawn stamps. And then I'm also using these round stickers, which they also sell in the store. This wonderful stencil, which is my favorite ever, and then 3 of the Distress Oxide inks. And then I have some blending tools to go along with them. Showing you a little tip here. If you don't have a round tool, you can, any more foam, you can use a rectangle one and cut around it. I make my own all the time. They're not perfect, but they work great. I find that these round ones work a lot better with stencils than the rectangle ones. So I have 3 small pieces of mixed media cardstock that are cut to about 3 by 3 inches. And then I am using one of these round stickers, and I did kind of just, rub it there on my shirt a little bit to remove some of the stickiness, just to make sure that it would not pull any paper off. So I'm using this as a mask. We're going to kind of do a little bit of a double masking technique today. So I am trying to be a little delicate with my application of the oxide inks. These are pigment and dye fusion ink, so they're more opaque. But I'm going to be doing the stenciling with the same color. And so my first layer here, I want to be a little light, a little more color concentrated towards the middle around that circle, and then kind of feathering out towards the edges. So I have some white around the edges. So now I'm going to take one of my stencil designs here. Love that this stencil has 3 different designs on it. Awesome. And I'm going to pick up that exact same color again. This is fossilized amber, and just going over that stencil. And this time I'm going full strength, and I can kind of pick up there and see what I have. And so you can see it's a little dark there, kind of where I want those edges to be more white. And so I can just take my blending tool, not picking any more ink up, and I'm just going over that just a little bit, just to tone those dots down, that design down a little bit, so it's more subtle in the background. And then now I'm going to go ahead and remove that mask, and you see that nice white circle left there in the middle. Love that. So because this is a pigment ink, I need to dry it before I do anything else. And I'm going to be putting a sticker on top of this, so I want it totally dry. And you'll need to do that for these oxide inks. You want to make sure that those inks are dry before you put anything like a sticker on top. And so I'm basically creating 3 of the same style of card with different colors. So now here is, all I did was cut this out. This is, the negative part of that circle that I removed. And so now I'm going to put that down because I want to stamp my images off on the edge. Like I don't want it right in the center of that circle. I want it to be kind of off. You'll see that what I'm doing here. And I did, because this paper doesn't cover the little sticker doesn't cover the entire part of my paper, I am going to need to use some extra paper there to cover up the sides. So all I did there was I changed my mind on the design that I wanted with the yellow. So I moved over to the mushrooms, and these are just some scrap pieces of paper that I'm using to cover up. And you'll see when I stamp this here, some of this image is going to go outside of that white circle that we have left behind. So I kind of wanted to do that because I like that look, almost like the image is inside, and then that yellow is on top. So there you can see the way that looks. And so now I'm going to set that aside, let that dry, and now I'm going on to my next card. And this time I'm using, I think it's Spice Marmalade. Forgive me if I've got that wrong. All of the products that I've used in today's video will be linked below in the description. And then you can also find a list of supplies on the Joggles blog, and that URL will be at the end of the video. So again, exact same technique, trying to keep a little bit of white on those edges. Now I'm going for a different, one of those other 3, kind of that chicken wire almost looking design. That's what it reminds me of. And I'm going full strength now with my ink. and I'm pressing a little bit harder so that I get a little darker color, and you can just see that very subtle design. Oh, I love that. So nice. And then you get that crisp white in the middle. And again, making sure that's completely dry before you add any sticker on top, because that would, really make that paper pull right off if that wasn't completely dry. And I'm just reusing the same sticker. I did end up on the third card. I think I ended up cutting a new this negative part here because it was starting to not really stick very much. So I did end up doing that, I think, for the third card. And this little edge was so thin there, I ended up turning everything around because I knew this stamp, you can kind of tell was, I knew which side of it was going to be outside of that window. This is fun. It's kind of like a little pea pod type design. Very cool. Very fun. So love that. And then I'll set that aside to dry, and let's work on the last one. So here I have a brand new sticker. Of course, again, remember that I'm super fast now. I really sped this up for the third time. Remember to make sure you kind of push that sticker on top of your clothes, your pants, something like that, just to remove a little bit of that stickiness, just so it doesn't, doesn't pull anything on your paper. It should be fine, but better safe than sorry. You'd hate to put the work in and then have to remove that. So this design, looked a little too, rectangular for me. So all I did was kind of go over those edges a little bit more with the blending tool and soften those edges out a little bit. And you can see this one's a little bit stickier than my first circle. So drying that off completely. And then I'll go ahead and put, I did cut a new open circle there. And then I also cut a mask for the daisy because I wanted to put 2 daisies there. So I didn't need to cover much, and I just cut a mask out of a piece of scrap paper. Now, some of my lines did not connect quite as well as I wanted them to. I'm just using a Copic multi-liner just to connect them, but that took 2 seconds to do that, and just to make sure that flower really looked like one was behind the other one. So here's my 3 little card fronts ready to go, and I'm going to color them with my Zig Clean Color water brush markers. I love these things. They're fantastic. And I am using a water brush, which is filled with, the barrel's filled with water. So when you use it, the water kind of flows out through the brush. And I'm laying down my dark color first, wetting that area, and then pulling that color down through the rest of the mushroom. When you work with these markers, the most important thing to remember is that you are working on a watercolor friendly paper. These don't work well at all if you were just to use them on a regular cardstock. They won't blend. They get really stuck because I think it just soaks too much into the paper. So this is a mixed media paper from Strathmore. Probably, watercolor paper was the very best that you could use, but I found that this Strathmore paper worked really well. And so again, I'm doing very simple shading. I'm not doing anything crazy because I'm no expert in that area. So just adding some shadowing, where it would be the darkest, and then using that water to pull the color down through the rest of the mushroom, adding a little bit at the bottom there as well. And then you just want to rinse your brush a little bit before you go on to the next color. So I did actually color the underneath part of the mushroom a dark brown, which was not what I was supposed to do, but I basically kept going over that same area with more water so I could pick some of that up and then added a little bit of that yellow there. And then now I'm just adding a little bit of shading there underneath. And you can shade with the markers without using water. So you can do a lighter color, put down your darker, and then blend with your lighter again. So you can do that as well. I find the easiest shading is putting down the dark on one side and then using that water to pull your color over to the other side, which will then, get lighter. And so that's a really easy way to add shading. And then for my flowers, I really, Again, very, very simple. Just laid down a little bit of yellow color. I used my water brush to completely blend that area in. So basically I have pretty much, this is such a light yellow, a yellow petal. Dried that, and then I'm coming in with a little bit of orange just to add a teeny bit of shading, a little bit of extra color, only going along one side of those petals, and then again using the water brush to blend that out a little bit. So this is really subtle because that yellow is such a light color, but adding that little pop of orange adds just a little bit extra. And I'm drawing in between because I don't want to go on to use my next color if my paper is too wet, because then those colors could end up running together. So again, very similar shading, coloring on the one side, pulling that color off to the other so that I have, I have a light source that's coming through. And then this is just, you can see I'm adding just a little bit on the side of those dots and then coloring them in. I find that these markers work so well for coloring. They're really awesome watercolor markers. I love them. Because you can always go back like I'm doing here, making sure those dots are a little bit darker. And then we'll make sure everything is dry before we go on. So here's my 3 pieces. They are all done. Everything's colored. And I'm going back in with a white gel pen to add white highlights here onto the mushroom, the little spots on the top. And then I'll also do, and this is already drawn on the stamp, so this was super easy. I just colored in the areas that were already marked on the stamp. And then I added a few little dots here and there. Sometimes you kind of see little speckles on top of mushrooms. Maybe these are toadstools. I love these. I love mushroom stamps. I don't know why. They're like some of my favorite. And then some little dots onto the little spots that are on the flowers. Kind of had those little white highlights are nice to add here and there. And then there were some little tiny dots on these pods that I didn't color with any color, so I'm just going to use my white gel marker to color those in. So now I'm going to cut my cards, and I'm actually, here's the Bristol. This is what I was using, the Strathmore. This is the Bristol Super Smooth. And my cards are all, I think they're 3.5 by 3.5, or maybe they're 4 by 4. I'll tell you exactly. No, it looks small. It is 3.5 by 3.5. And so I just used a piece of paper, cut those all down, and that's just so I have a little bit of a white border. So I kind of wanted something a little bit extra, a frame, but I didn't want a thick frame that would cover up my nice Distress ink. So I am actually using I call it a pokey tool. And I'm just going around the circle and adding this little faux stitch marks. And I did that around all 3. You can really get a good look at it there on the back. And then I'm putting some foam tape on all 3 of my cards so those pop up a little bit off of the base. And here are all 3 of my cards. Aren't they so cute? Oh, sentiments. I need to add sentiments. Yes, I did that. So these are some stamp sets from Sweet and Sassy. There's a variety of them. And I just basically grabbed 4 or 5 sentiments that I thought could work, ones that were the right size. And I'm just stamping those on some black cardstock. And then I'm going to emboss that with some white embossing powder. And that black looks really nice against those bright colors of the Distress inks and those pretty flowers. And so I will heat emboss those. Just getting some of the extra off. I'm terrible about using an anti-stick tool or any anti-stick powder, which is really what you should do before you heat emboss. I always just wing it. And so I'm going to cut these down, kind of figure out which ones I like, which goes the best. And then I, created some little tails on each of them, put some foam tape, and just attach those onto the front of my cards. That is it. And I love this little stamp set. This would be great to give as a gift even, I think. I did add a little bit of Wink of Stella shimmer because, well, you got to have a little bit. And those little tiny dots are just calling for something. So I did that. And this would be a fun, if you ever staying with somebody, this is a nice little gift to give with some homemade cookies or something. You give a little gift set of note cards. I've done that a bunch. So of course, little glossy accents, really just having a little bit of extra adds just, you know, something to the card. It gives it a little bit of dimension and that little bit of shine. And so anywhere on those little dots on the flowers and on the little pod and on my mushrooms, I just use my glossy accents. And of course, that might be a little milky when you first put that out on your cards, but it will dry completely clear. And that is it for my cards for today's project. Thank you so much for watching. Here are some close-up photos, more to be found on the Joggles blog, which is listed here along with my blog. Thank you so much. Happy crafting.